Have you ever wondered why people seem so uneasy around you? Why their eyes dart away, their words stumble, or their energy feels conflicted when they're in your presence? If you're here, you've probably felt like you don't really belong in this world the way others do. You walk into a room and the energy shifts. People notice you even when you're not trying to be noticed. You're not loud or seeking attention, yet your energy feels like a silent thunderstorm, undeniable, powerful, and deeply unsettling to those who don't understand it. That's not arrogance. It's not ego. It's reality. You're different. You've always known this, and so have they. But here's the truth. People don't fear you because of what you say or do. They fear you because of what you represent. And that's what we're going to uncover today. Let's start by addressing something that many chosen ones already know but rarely put into words. Your behavior isn't random. The way you carry yourself, the way you think, the way you challenge societal norms, it's intentional, even if you're not fully aware of it. You've been placed here with a purpose, and whether you call it divine order, destiny, or simply being set apart, the fact remains that your presence disrupts the status quo. But why does this bother people so much? Why does it make them uncomfortable? It's not because you're wrong, but because you remind them of the truth they're avoiding within themselves. Let me ask you this. How often have you found yourself in situations where people project their fears, insecurities, or doubts onto you? It happens so often that you probably don't even notice anymore. You might say something simple, something true, and it feels like you've just set off a chain reaction in someone's mind. They either get defensive, avoid you, or try to diminish your light. Why? Because you symbolize something they're not ready to face. You bring clarity where they've built walls. You shine light where they've chosen darkness, and this terrifies them.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Here's an example. Think back to a moment when you spoke your truth in a room full of people. Maybe it was during a casual conversation, or perhaps it was in a more formal setting. You didn't raise your voice, but your words carried weight. You weren't trying to prove a point, yet your presence alone felt like a challenge. That's because chosen ones don't need to force anything. Your energy alone is enough to shift the dynamics of any space you occupy. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not just what you say that people fear. It's what you don't say. Your silence, your restraint, your ability to observe without reacting, it's unnerving to them. Why? Because most people are used to engaging with others on a surface level. They thrive on small talk, distractions, and avoidance. But when they meet someone like you, someone who sees through the facade, they're forced to confront the parts of themselves they've been running from. Your presence acts like a mirror, reflecting their deepest fears, insecurities, and unresolved issues. And let's be honest, people don't like mirrors, not the kind that shows them who they really are. They'd rather smash the mirror than face the truth. Now, let's take this a step further. Have you ever noticed how people try to put you in a box? They label you as too intense, too different, or even too much. But what they're really saying is, I don't know how to handle your authenticity. And that's the key word, authenticity. In a world full of masks, your authenticity is disruptive. You don't conform. You don't pretend. You don't play the games that others are so comfortable playing. And that makes you unpredictable. People fear what they can't predict, what they can't control. And chosen ones? You're the embodiment of that fear. But let's pause for a moment. I want you to think about this deeply. How much of this fear is actually about you, and how much of it is about them? Because here's the truth, most of the time, it has nothing to do with you. People's reactions are a reflection of their internal struggles. You're just the catalyst. You're the spark that ignites something dormant within them. And while it's easy to take their reactions personally, you must remember that their fear is not your burden to carry. Your job is not to make people comfortable. Your job is to be yourself, to live your truth unapologetically. But let's not romanticize this. Being a chosen one isn't easy. It's not glamorous. It's isolating. The very thing that makes you special is also the thing that makes you different. And humans, by nature, fear what they don't understand. They fear the unknown. And you're the unknown. You're not afraid to ask the hard questions, to challenge the norms, to disrupt the narrative. And in doing so, you expose the cracks in the foundation of everything people think they know. Let me ask you something else. How often do you feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders? Like you're constantly walking a tightrope between being true to yourself and navigating the expectations of others? That's because being chosen comes with responsibility. Whether you realize it or not, you're here to lead, to guide, and to awaken others. But here's the paradox: most people don't want to be awakened. They say they do, but when faced with the truth, they retreat, they resist, they fight back. And that's why they fear you. But here's the good news: their fear is not your failure. In fact, it's proof that you're doing exactly what you're meant to do. You're shaking things up. You're challenging the status quo. You're planting seeds of change, even if people don't realize it in the moment. And while it's tempting to dim your light to make others comfortable, remember this: the world doesn't need more conformity. It needs more authenticity. It needs more people like you, people who are willing to stand in their truth, even when it's uncomfortable. So the next time someone reacts to your behavior with fear, ask yourself, what is this really about? Is it about me, or is it about them? And more importantly, how can I stay true to myself in the face of their fear? Because at the end of the day, being a chosen one isn't about being liked or accepted. It's about being authentic. It's about being true. And that's something that no amount of fear can ever take away from you. There's something uniquely painful about being misunderstood by the people who are supposed to know you best. Family, friends, loved ones, they're the ones who are supposed to see you, understand you, support you. Yet, for chosen ones, this is often the very group of people who misunderstand you the most. And it's not because they don't care. It's not because they don't love you. It's because they don't see you not fully. And that's not their fault. Not everyone has the capacity to see beyond the surface, to understand what they've never experienced themselves. I think about it. You've always been different, haven't you? Even as a child, you probably felt it. Maybe you were the one who asked questions that nobody had answers to, the one who felt things more deeply, the one who saw connections that others overlooked. You didn't just accept the world as it was presented to you. You questioned it, you observed it, you challenged it. And for those around you, especially those closest to you, this could feel threatening. Not because you were doing anything wrong, but because you were breaking the unspoken rules of how most people live. Follow the path, don't ask too many questions, and keep your head down. But you couldn't follow that script. Something inside you just wouldn't allow it. Let me ask you this: how many times have you been told, why can't you just be normal? Or maybe it came out in a different way, more subtle, more indirect. People telling you to lighten up, stop overthinking, or just go along with it. These aren't harmless comments. They're attempts to mold you, to shrink you down to a version of yourself that's more digestible, more palatable, more normal. But here's the thing: you're not here to fit into their boxes. You're not here to make yourself smaller so others can feel comfortable. You're here to be exactly who you are, even if that makes people uncomfortable. And often, the people closest to you will struggle the most with this. Why? Because they're invested in the version of you that makes sense to them. They've created a mental image of who you are based on their own experiences, beliefs, and limitations. But the real you, the one that doesn't fit neatly into their expectations, that version of you is harder for them to understand. And when people don't understand something, their default reaction is often fear, frustration, or even rejection. Here's where it gets tricky though. As a chosen one, you feel things deeply. You're not just misunderstood, you feel misunderstood. It's not just a surface-level inconvenience. It's a deep, aching sense of loneliness, even when you're surrounded by people. You could be sitting in a room full of family or friends, laughing and talking, and still feel like you're somewhere else entirely. Like there's a part of you they can't reach, a part of you they'll never fully understand. And that's because there is. You see, chosen ones operate on a different frequency. It's not better or worse, it's just different. You perceive things others don't. You feel emotions, energies, and truths that others are blind to. And this isn't something you can turn off. It's not something you can explain to someone who hasn't experienced it themselves. So, when the people closest to you try to connect with you on a surface level, it feels hollow. Not because they're shallow, but because they're speaking a language you've outgrown. Here's the hard truth: not everyone is meant to understand you. And that's okay. You don't need to be understood by everyone, not even by the people closest to you. Your path is your own, and it's not your job to translate your journey for others. Some people will never understand why you think the way you do, why you act the way you do, why you are the way you are. And that's not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their capacity. But this doesn't mean you should isolate yourself. Being misunderstood doesn't mean you're destined to walk this path alone. It just means you need to be selective about who you let into the deeper parts of your soul. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Not everyone is capable of holding space for the full weight of who you are. And that's okay. It's better to have a small circle of people who truly see you than a large circle of people who only see the surface. So what do you do when the people closest to you don't understand you? How do you navigate those relationships without losing yourself in the process? The answer is simple, but not easy. You set boundaries. You protect your energy. You love them for who they are, not who you wish they could be. And you accept that their inability to understand you doesn't diminish your value. Here's the paradox though. Even though they don't fully understand you, they still feel your energy. They may not be able to articulate it, but they sense that you're different. And this can create tension. On one hand, they're drawn to your light. On the other hand, that same light exposes their shadows. And that's where the fear, the misunderstanding, and the resistance come from. But here's the beautiful part. Even if they don't understand you, your presence still has an impact. By simply being yourself, you challenge them to grow, to question, to evolve. They may resist it. They may push back. But deep down, they're being changed by you, whether they realize it or not. So, the next time you feel misunderstood, remember this: it's not your job to make everyone understand you. It's your job to stay true to yourself, to walk your path with integrity, and to trust that the right people will see you for who you truly are. And those who don't, that's their journey, not yours. Have you ever felt like the world is actively working against you? Like every time you step into your light, something or someone tries to pull you back into the shadows? It's a strange feeling, isn't it? You're not trying to compete with anyone. You're not trying to outshine anyone. Yet, it feels like forces around you are conspiring to suppress your brilliance, to silence your voice, to make you doubt who you are. Why is that? Why does the world seem so intent on dimming the light of chosen ones? It all begins with one simple truth. The world thrives on conformity. Society as we know it is built on systems that demand order, predictability, and control. From the moment you're born, you're taught to follow a script. Go to school, get a job, fit in, follow the rules, don't make waves. And for most people, this script feels safe. It gives them a sense of identity, structure, and belonging. But for chosen ones, that script has never felt right. You've always felt like there's something more, haven't you? Something beyond the surface of what you've been taught. You see the cracks in the systems. You sense the lies hidden beneath the surface. And, most importantly, you refuse to follow a path that doesn't align with your truth. This refusal to conform makes you a threat, not just to individuals, but to the very systems that society depends on. I think about it. The world doesn't want free thinkers. It doesn't want people who question the narrative, who challenge the norm, who refuse to stay in their lane. It wants people who will follow the rules without asking why the rules exist in the first place. But you're not wired that way. You can't ignore the deeper truths. You can't pretend the cracks don't exist. And because of that, the world will try to silence you. It happens in subtle ways. People dismiss your ideas, question your intentions, or try to manipulate you into doubting yourself. They may label you as too ambitious, too sensitive, or too idealistic, not because you're any of those things, but because your authenticity makes them uncomfortable. You challenge the status quo simply by existing. And for a world that depends on conformity, your authenticity is a disruption. But let's take this deeper. Why does the world fear chosen ones specifically? Why does your light feel like such a threat? The answer lies in what you represent. You stand for change, growth, awakening, and while these are beautiful things, they're also terrifying for people who are deeply attached to the old ways of being. Change requires letting go. Growth requires discomfort. Awakening requires facing truths that most people would rather avoid. And when someone like you comes along, someone who embodies these things, it forces people to confront the parts of themselves they've been running from. You see, most people aren't afraid of you, they're afraid of what you make them feel. Your presence brings out their insecurities, their doubts, their unresolved wounds. When they see you standing in your power, it reminds them of all the ways they've given theirs away. When they see you speaking your truth, it highlights all the lies they've been telling themselves. When they see you living authentically, it exposes the masks they've been wearing. And that's not an easy thing for anyone to face. But here's the paradox. While the world tries to dim your light, it also desperately needs it. I think about the greatest changes in history. The people who challenged oppressive systems, who brought new ideas, who inspired movements, they were all chosen ones. They were people who refused to conform, who stayed true to their vision, even when the world tried to silence them. And while they faced resistance, they also planted the seeds of transformation. This is your role. Whether you realize it or not, your light is a catalyst. It disrupts, it awakens, it inspires. And while the world may resist it, it also depends on it. Because without people like you, there would be no growth, no evolution, no progress. But let's be honest, this isn't an easy path. Being a chosen one means walking through darkness. It means facing rejection, criticism, and resistance. It means feeling isolated, misunderstood, and out of place. And sometimes it means doubting yourself. But here's the thing, your light is not just for you. It's for the people who are watching you, even if they never say it. It's for the ones who are inspired by your courage, your authenticity, your refusal to settle. It's for the next generation who will look to you as proof that it's possible to live a life of purpose and truth. The world may try to dim your light, but it can't extinguish it. Because your light doesn't come from external validation. It comes from within. It comes from your connection to something greater than yourself, whether you call it God, the universe, or simply your higher self. And that connection is unshakable. So, the next time you feel the weight of the world trying to pull you down, remember this: you were not chosen to fit in. You were chosen to stand out. You were chosen to challenge, to disrupt, to awaken. And while the path may be difficult, it's also deeply meaningful. Your light is your gift. Don't let the world convince you to hide it. Let's talk about isolation. Not the kind where you're simply alone, But the deeper kind, the kind that feels like a heavy silence, like you're walking through life on a path no one else can see. If you're a chosen one, you know this feeling well. It's that quiet space where you start to wonder if anyone truly understands you. You've been there, haven't you? Maybe you're there right now. But here's the thing, isolation isn't a punishment. It's a gift. And when you understand its purpose, it becomes one of your greatest sources of power. Let's start with this. Why does isolation seem to follow chosen ones? Why do people who are destined for something greater often find themselves standing apart from the crowd? The answer is simple. Transformation requires solitude. It's in these moments of isolation that you're forced to confront yourself, your fears, your doubts, your truths. You can't distract yourself with noise or other people's opinions. You're stripped down to the core of who you are, and that's exactly where you need to be. Because here's the truth, the world isn't quiet. It's loud, chaotic, and full of distractions. And if you're not careful, it's easy to lose yourself in the noise. It's easy to get caught up in what other people expect of you, in the endless cycle of seeking approval, validation, or belonging. But when you're isolated, all of that falls away. The noise stops. The masks come off. And what's left is the real you, the unfiltered, authentic version of yourself that's been hidden beneath layers of conditioning. But let's not sugarcoat it, solitude is hard. It forces you to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. The wounds, the insecurities, the doubts, they all rise to the surface in the silence. And that's uncomfortable, painful even. But it's also necessary. Because you can't heal what you're not willing to face. You can't grow if you're unwilling to confront your own shadow. And chosen ones, you're here to grow. You're here to evolve, to break free from the limitations that have been placed on you. And that process begins in solitude. I think about it. Every great transformation requires a period of isolation. The caterpillar retreats into its cocoon before it can become a butterfly. Seeds are planted in darkness before they grow toward the light. And you're no different. Your isolation is your cocoon. It's the fertile soil where your purpose begins to take root. It's the space where you shed the old version of yourself and step into the person you're meant to be. But there's another reason why isolation is essential for chosen ones. It protects your energy. When you're surrounded by people all the time, it's easy to absorb their fears, their doubts, their limiting beliefs. And as someone who feels deeply, you're especially vulnerable to this. You pick up on energies that others don't even notice. You sense their unspoken thoughts, their hidden wounds, their unresolved pain. And if you're not careful, you can mistake those energies for your own. Solitude allows you to reset. It gives you the space to release what doesn't belong to you, to reconnect with your own energy. It's like clearing out the static so you can hear the signal again. And once you've done that, you can re-enter the world with clarity, strength, and purpose. But here's the paradox. While isolation is necessary, it's not permanent. You're not meant to stay in the cocoon forever. You're not meant to hide your light from the world. Solitude is the place where you prepare, where you heal, where you grow. But eventually, you're called to step out, to share what you've learned, to shine your light in a way that inspires others. So, how do you balance the gift of solitude with the responsibility of sharing your light? How do you honor your need for quiet while still fulfilling your purpose in the world? The answer is simple. You listen. You listen to the rhythms of your own soul. There will be times when you're called to retreat, to protect your energy, to go within. And there will be times when you're called to step forward, to share your truth, to lead. Trust that you'll know the difference. Trust that your intuition will guide you. But here's the most important thing to remember. Your isolation is not a sign of weakness. It's not a punishment. It's a preparation. The world may not understand it. People may question why you need so much time alone, why you're not always available. why you choose to walk a path that looks so different from theirs. But that's okay. They don't need to understand. This is your journey, not theirs. And when the time comes for you to step out of the silence, you'll do so with a strength that can only come from knowing yourself deeply. You'll carry a wisdom that can only be gained through solitude. And you'll shine with a light that can only come from embracing the fullness of who you are. So the next time you find yourself in a season of isolation, don't fight it. Don't run from it. Instead, lean into it. Embrace it. Trust that it's exactly where you need to be. Because the gift of isolation isn't just about finding yourself. It's about preparing yourself. It's about becoming the person you were always meant to be. And when you emerge, the world won't be able to ignore your light. Because chosen ones, you were never meant to fit into the world. You were meant to change it.